Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Start podcast, where we have founders like Olufunto here with me today share their story of how they started their business. So, welcome, Olufunto. Can you just share with us, your role, your business, and how you started Chanja Datti?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ukot, for the opportunity and the platform. You're doing phenomenal work with just, creating this platform and allowing us entrepreneurs to be able to share how we started. So, how did I start Chanja? And for those who don't know, Chanja actually means change that in Hausa. And even though I'm a Yoruba woman, people are like, what is the correlation or what's the connection? Well, because I live in Abuja and, our headquarters was birthed out of northern part of Nigeria. I just wanted something that would sort of um, indicate that, right? I would pay homage to the fact that I'm based in Abuja. So that's where our name came from. And in order to be able to do full justice to how and why I started Change.Dirty, I have to give you a bit of background about me as a person as well. So I got the opportunity to school in the US. And so I did my undergrad and my master's degrees in the US. Um, and I also worked with General Electric, GE Capital, actually, the capital arm, for close to 12 years. So I'd risen through the ranks to become a vice president, actually, after like my 12-year sojourn with them. But there was always this thing that was always at the back of my, each time I came home to visit my parents, there was always something number one, calling me back to the continent, especially to Nigeria. But I was always very concerned about the amount of waste that I saw in our street corners, in our neighborhoods, and I would always be amazed when I would look around and people had turned what was supposed to be a bus stop, right, to dump site. And and it was always a bit of a culture shock for me coming from, Connecticut or coming from New York and then landing in Nigeria and then driving home. And I was just like, this, we can't go on like this. So that was number one. Number two was the fact that each time I came home, the people old enough to be my grandparents were always genuflecting and greeting, and because maybe they thought I had a spare dollar or two, right? Would always come and greet. And when you ask, why are you not working? They would say, my daughter had no work. And that always troubled me, right? Because the Nigeria that I remember, we're proud people. We're very, even across Africa, people always say, oh, Nigerians are very aggressive. We're very proud. We're very, so when people are reduced to this level where they are genuflecting for people old enough to be their grandchildren, it tells you that there's something systematic that is wrong. So, and I always joke and tell people that I think that my mother prayed me back to Nigeria finally. I mean, there was this pull, like I said, but I feel like, I finally caved in and I came back to Nigeria. But I was very clear on what I wanted to achieve when I moved back to Nigeria. So there were four areas that I said, if I can have a bit of a contribution to this sector, that I feel like I'm contributing to Nigeria as a whole and maybe Africa as a continent. And one of it was the energy sector, because, as you heard, there's always no light, no electricity. You hear harrowing stories of, people who die on the operating table because maybe they took lights in the middle of operation or something very weird that would never happen in a developed country. So for me, energy sector was one of the things where I was like, well, if I can get an inroad there and maybe provide my own quota, I will feel more fulfilled and it will be part of my legacy. So, and I was very fortunate that I moved back even though I was past 35, I think. I was maybe 36 or 37 when I moved back to Nigeria. But Nigerian law. So I had to come back and serve, do my NYSC, because if you graduate before 30, that's just the rule. No matter how old you were, as long as you graduated before 30, both internationally and locally, you have to serve Nigeria. So I had to come back and do my NYSC, my National Youth Service Corps, as a very mature lady. But, that sort of set me up for, it was a nice bit of intro into coming back to Nigeria after, at this point in time, close to 20 years I'd been gone out of the country. Um, but one of the things that also happened was that I was able to get posted to the Ministry of Power, which is the equivalent of the Ministry of Energy for those in the developing climes. And so I was a technical advisor to the minister. So I was one step closer to my, dream of at least being able to
Image.
create provide my own quota to the energy conversation that was happening. It was in that role that I think my eyes became open to the whole waste problem, because we had a lot of investors who, and that was part of my portfolio, we had a lot of investors who would come in country and wanted to do waste to energy. Right, Nigeria, we have a lot of waste in Nigeria, but unfortunately, we don't sort our waste in the way that a lot of the people who need the waste for energy production need it. So that was my aha moment, because a lot of them would go back frustrated and say, Nigeria has a lot of waste, but it's not sorted. So yeah, they're mixing wet waste with dry waste. They're mixing home household waste with, recyclable waste. It's just a mess, right? And it's not usable. So for me, that was another aha moment. I was like, okay, hold up. I've seen, the amount of waste each time I came home, to visit Nigeria. Now that I'm in Nigeria, I every day I see the magnitude of the waste problem. I'm sure you've seen the same thing, where people
Yeah.
will be driving in traffic and they'll toss out their bottle, after they, those kind of scenarios, right? So I was like, okay, this is a big problem that needs a solution of some sort. And the more I started doing research, the more my eyes became wider to the problem. I mean, in Nigeria, we're over 200 million people, right? We
That's a
generate over
lot of
64
waste.
million tons of waste a year.
Hmm.
And only about 5% of it is recycled. Only about maybe 10 to 20% of it is collected. So that's why you see, like, we have, landfills just springing up every day, different places that are not even engineered landfills, right? They're just, you see people's land, pieces of land. When people look around in the community and they see that nobody has come to claim a land, they turn it into a dump site, right? So
Mm-hmm.
these are real problems. Meanwhile, on the flip side of this, I always tell people that waste is displaced resources, right? People really need, even the manufacturing sector need this waste, because you can recycle it into something that can be used in the manufacturing process. An example is that you can take, paper. So instead of cutting down new trees, you can take, used paper and recycle it into new paper, or into tissue paper, or into, hand towels, know, you can take cans and recycle it into nails, into steel rods, into new cans. You can take plastic bottles, right, and recycle into new plastic bottles, right? I mean, the usages of recycled materials is limitless. So that was where the idea was birthed. I was like, aha, okay, I'm going to not only solve the problem of recycling, but I'm going to, create awareness and sensitization around this issue. Because for me, I think sensitization and awareness is one of the key components, right,
Yeah.
of solving this problem. People don't know what they don't know, but if people can educate them or tell them that you know that these are the consequences of you doing this, or if you do X, this is why will happen, and but if you do X and then you do Z, and you're able to earn an income from doing Z, then everybody, it's a win-win for all parties. And so that was for me how the journey started. And so this journey started in 2015. I was leaving my role with the Minister of Power,
Mm-hmm.
and I had worked with, like I said, G for 12 years. And so initially I was saying, oh, do I go and maybe work with G in Nigeria? Was thinking about it, was like, should I work for corporate? But again, there was just something in my heart that just said, no, you need to sort of not only fulfill your dream of being able to create jobs, but also clean up the environment. And I always joke with people and tell people that I feel like God sent me to the earth to be his housemaid, right? Clean up the environment, right? That's, like to be like because that's really what we're doing. We're trying to clean up the environment. And I know that, if I had joined corporate Nigeria, the corporate world, not to say that I wouldn't have been able to contribute my quota, but I think, this is a plea to everybody who has the entrepreneurial spirit, try it out, because you create more jobs that way. And I know there's a statistic that says that, SMEs, MSMEs and SMEs in Nigeria generate over 86% of jobs in Nigeria, are responsible for more than 86% of jobs in Nigeria, and more than half of the national GDP. So there's a role that MSMEs and SMEs are playing in Nigeria that sometimes doesn't get acknowledged. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so going back to my story about Chanja Datti, again, that was when I was like, okay, I want to do this. Waste is a problem. Right now we're not sorting our waste, so there needs to be a sensitization and awareness piece to this. And then we started. And I remember our first collection was I used my Camry then to go do a collection from someone in, I think it was Grandpa. We started getting the word out there. We started meeting corporate partners, looking for corporate partnerships. I would say this, that we had a lot more. I think for every one yes, we had 9 no's in the beginning. I mean, there were a lot of doors. People didn't get it. People still don't really get it even now, but I think there's more awareness now than 8 years ago when we started. And we just started, we tried to put structure in place. We registered our company. The other,
Sorry,
I
so sorry, I'm going to ask you a question. So you keep saying we, so that means you're
yeah,
able to get people, because someone may be listening and wondering, how did you go from I to we? How did you get someone to, of course, when people listen to stories like this, they're thinking, oh, it's because she had money, she had worked. So can you just share that story? Because that's what we really want to get to, how to start. So how did you start from that last day when you left the minister's office? How did you go from nothing to that first day of Chanja Datti?
gotcha. So yeah, and I'm going to be very transparent. So I did have the very first staff for Chanja was my personal driver that I converted to our logistics manager. Okay, so it was the very first staff for Chanja, and it was because he was already there. I just said, okay, you're going to, because I could do the collection, but I needed support, right? So he would start going around with my Camry to do collections. But I wanted to meet these people that had even had the faith, whatever to say, come pick my waste, right? So we would go together and then we'll put all the waste in our trunk, the trunk of my car. And then it went from one person, we hired 2 more people, young
Okay.
guys who had finished secondary school, were looking to study up for jam, but had some time um, that they were using to study, but had time on their hands and they wanted to earn money for their jam form. So I brought on 2 more people. I'm proud to say that one of the 2 and my logistics manager, they're still with Chanja Datti. So they've been my longest
Wow.
serving, yes, 8+ years. Mafa and Mr. Francis. Um, and that was how we started, honestly. Like I said, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we also had applied for a pitch competition just before we kicked off, right? And we actually got the grand prize of 1 million naira, which for me was further validation that we were on the right track. But what that 1 million naira helped to do was to register Chanja Datti. So I would always
Mm-hmm.
tell people, make sure you have an entity that you register, no matter how much it is, or no matter how, and even if you don't have money for a proper business registration, do a DBA or doing business as, and have a formal name. So that was one of the things we did, and that allowed us to be able to open a bank account. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
big supporter of this because you don't ever want to commingle your funds, right? And you don't want you or your people or people that you're talking to treat it like a hobby. You want people to really take you seriously. So you need to put the framework around it. So I would write letters to organizations saying, oh, we're a recycling company, first of its kind in Abuja. We want to come and collect your waste. Again, another company that really gave us a stamp of approval and said, okay, come and be a partner to us was the Transcorp Hilton Hotel. So
Oh,
we had
wow.
written letters to a
Okay.
lot of organizations, and the Transcorp Hilton Hotel, which is a big hotel and one
Mm-hmm.
of the best in Nigeria, I believe, said, okay, come and start collecting our waste. And again, that was a stamp of
Yeah.
validation to say we're doing the. But like I said, for every 1 yes that we got, there were probably 9 no's behind that. So we kept on. And the other thing I'll tell anybody who has an idea or a vision is you have to be tenacious.
Mm-hmm.
The tenacity, your tenacity on a scale of 1 to 10 has to be 100, because you're going to get, when you're starting out and people don't understand what you're doing, you're going to have a lot of no's, more no's than yes. So that's not the time to give up. That's the time to actually just dig your heels in and continue the work that you're doing.
Yeah, Funto, I have
And
another
then,
question. Sorry
sure.
to cut you
No,
in.
no,
So
no, go. I mean,
you
please go
started your
ahead.
collecting waste. How did you recycle? Like, what's that? Because how did you get a recycling place? What were you doing with the waste?
So again, full transparency, for the first maybe 3 months, I was just collecting, because I was collecting in bits and pieces, right? Not enough to bail and send to Lagos. At that point in time, there were no recycling. So we started as aggregators, and
Mm-hmm.
we still aggregate, but our recycling component didn't start until 2017. So that didn't start until 2 years after. And so the other thing
Wow.
I'll tell people is that you might have a dream of something big, but start where you
Mm-hmm.
are. So
Wow.
we started with just collection, and I think I had to collect for like I collected for like maybe 3 to 5 months of just, collecting materials before I had enough to now bail and send to Lagos, to a proper recycler in Lagos, right? The other thing that I would say is that we found we were able to get land, and we were able to lease land. We were able to lease land, although again, full transparency, it was family land that wasn't being used, but we leased it. We did it properly and we leased it. And then we started putting our materials there. Okay,
Okay.
so I will always encourage people, the people in whatever location you're in, the people that have land that are not being used, that you can approach them and say, please, can I use this is who we are with this entity. We're willing to sign an agreement, even if it's for a year, and we're willing to pay a land rent for X, instead of, you can earn additional income, but we just need to use it for a year or 2 years until you want to start your project. So again, you don't need money to buy land, if that makes sense. Because again, a lot of people sometimes they feel like they need to do it in a big way. Otherwise, you start where you are. We're in our 8th year now, and I can tell you that we just bought our land last year, our own land for our factory space last year. So it means that we were doing this work for 7 years, and we were renting, we were leasing space, we were paying, other people. So again, that's another word to people who want to
Yeah.
start their business. You don't start where you are. Start where you are. So, like I said, we leased the space and then we started collecting. We didn't have enough feedstock until maybe month 3 to be able to bail and send to Lagos. And that was sort of like the start of the journey and then, word of mouth, or we would start telling people. We use social media to get word of mouth out there. We attended a lot of industry events. We attended a lot of entrepreneurship events, and I always encourage people who are starting their own businesses. Your network is so critical. It is so important, right? Because you need people to know what you're doing. You need people who are going to be your supporters or sponsors. You need people to meet you face to face, especially when you're an unknown entity, to say, "Oh, I've met." It's so amazing for me now. I was on a panelist on a call, on a meeting, I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday. And somebody was on the call who said, "Oh, and even my sister, Mrs. Boroffice, I met her in 2018 at something, something, something." And honestly, I did not remember. You understand what I mean? I could not
Yeah.
remember. But one of the things that I was part of my strategy then was to go for as many entrepreneurship or as many events that had something to do with my line of field, or something close, and network the heck. I used to have 10. I used to have my business cards, and I would make sure that if I went for any networking event, I gave my card to at least 10 people. And I collected 10 people's cards that I would follow up religiously with. And I have to tell you that if I didn't do that, that was a waste of my time. My mindset was like, if I didn't collect 10 people's cards that I could follow up with, it was a waste of my time and my energy. So that was my thing for a long time, where I would go and give out my cards, collect people's cards, and follow up and build that network. Because when you want to start work, this gentleman now is the president of the Association of Waste Pickers in Lagos. So he called my number from the organizer, and he said, "Madam, we still need to work together. The conversation we had in 2018, we need to bring it to reality now."
That's so
So
amazing. You're reaping. Yeah.
you don't know when things are going to, no matter how long ago it was the conversations were,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know when those conversations are going to yield any kind of fruit. So I would say network, network, network. It is so critical, even when you're just starting. And the other thing I want to quickly mention is a lot of us have imposter syndrome. You're like, what am I doing that necessitates me doing this? Just go and represent yourself to the best of your ability, given who you are, where you are, and continue to build on. So,
Mm-hmm.
in life, we're not static, right? We need to sort of grow and move forward, and nobody expects that where we even as Chanja, that where we were in 2015 is where we are today. I mean, like I said, I started with just me and Mr. Francis, my driver turned logistics manager, and then we hired 2 more people, and we did that for maybe a year plus, and now I have a staff strength of 75 people full time, and I have part
Wow.
time over 100 women working for us, outside of other things that we're doing, right? So
Wow.
that's in 8 years. Like I said, when we started, we were leasing spaces. Now we bought our own. We bought our own piece of land last year. We just bought the adjoining land now this month. So
Wow.
we're expanding. So again, it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
Things take
Mm-hmm.
time. It's not
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to happen immediately, but you need to put in the hard work. You need to be tenacious. You need to have a structure in place, which is registration of your business. doing your logo, your letterhead, when you're writing to people, make it official. So even if you're, people might say, oh, even now, sometimes when people come and they say, oh, we're coming to Chanja Datti, I think they think we're this big conglomerate. And I'm like, if you come to one of our list spaces, you'll be like shocked because it's a open space with bottles or portals of, but they think that we're this big because we put structure in place, right? And our
It's
impact is
amazing.
speaking for us. So again, my other advice to anybody who's starting up is please, please, please start where you are. Don't wait for that big break where, some people say, oh, until I have ₦1 million before I start. I don't think that I had up to ₦1 million in the account when I started, right? But we started. We just, and then the other thing that I will always tell people, and this has come with time. I think with Chanja Datti, I saw a need, I saw a problem, and I was emphatic about trying to solve. But now with, a lot of training and everything, people always talk about your business model, to have a business plan. But I always tell people, don't even, business plan could be 20 pages, it could be 300 pages, depending on how in depth, right? Just start with a simple agile BMC, which is a business model canvas.
Yeah.
And that is just 9 sections that tells you, if you start this business today, who are your customers? How are you going to make money? Where are you going to get what are your channels for distribution?
Mm-hmm.
What are your
Let me
streams, your cost streams?
let me just
Sorry.
do a quick plug for Start Workshop. We're holding a Start Workshop every month, and the business model canvas is a core part of that training. So if you're watching this, you need to be you need to join the next Start Workshop. So every month, just check out our website, www.cocreateafrica.com, and you'll get all the details. So back to you, Funto.
But excellent, because again, these are lessons learned that, I wish I had, like I said, I started with passion, but there's some mistakes we made along the way that I think we wouldn't have made if we had done something like that to fully understand, all the potential,
Mm-hmm.
gaps.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a critical way. You don't have to spend too much time, but it can quickly give you a snapshot of how the business will be, right? And like I said, how are you going to make money? That is a critical part of the work we do. I always tell people that the bedrock of the work that we do is on 4 P's, right? It's people, it's profit, it's planet, and it's partnerships, right?
Hmm.
And the partnerships is a +1, but the 3 P's, like people, profit, and
Planet.
partnership and planet,
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's like a three-legged stool, and if you remove any of the legs, it falls off. And I think when I first started, I was doing a lot of the people and the planet, and not enough of the profit.
Yeah.
So it was so tough because we were doing a lot of robbing Peter to pay Paul. We were doing all this, because we're social enterprise as well. We care about the environment, we care about people. So we're doing a lot of this, cleanups. We're doing a lot of people facing events. Well, the business arm of things was suffering. It was suffering. Um, and it was because my BMC was not fully crafted enough to be able to say, okay, this is, and to be able to sort of, it wasn't until our accountant and the chairman of my board, I think, called me and said, you can't go on this way. Otherwise, Chanja Datti as an entity will die. If you continue to take money, the small money you're making, and putting it into, all this impact work. So we needed to, it was, and this was in 2019 that I finally formed a sister NGO to support the work we were doing, but to also be able to solicit for grants, for the work that we were doing. So that was one of the things that we had gotten advice to do that we ended up doing. But again, yeah, so I would say that always understand how you're going to make money because you're not running a charity. And there's nothing bad about it because some people also have the guilt of, oh, my business should not just be about money, but your business cannot grow. You cannot pay your staff members if you don't have money, if money is not coming in. You cannot put the lights on. You cannot, put the lights on physical. I cannot work my machines. I cannot buy equipment. I cannot buy even the waste material if I don't have money coming in. So that's a big part of the conversation that I want anybody who's starting up any business to ensure that they have that sort of sorted out first or understood before they go into any business.
Amazing. Amazing. The fun thing about doing this is that you're like, oh, let me interview Funto so that I can share with my community. But I feel like I'm getting a front row seat. I'm learning, I'm taking notes. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
sharing. And it's always so inspiring to hear these stories. And I'm sure that our community of people in Co-Create Africa that we're encouraging to start will also find so much value from listening to you. Thank you for sharing your journey and your
No,
experience. And I really love the focus on time. Sometimes we're in a hurry. I want results yesterday, but it takes time. You've been at this for 8 years and you're definitely not where you were. And I pray that it will only continue to grow and expand. And hopefully,
yes.
like you said, as God's made to come and clean the earth, you will actually achieve your goal. Okay.
Thank you.
So I
Yeah.
wish you all the very best, Funto. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much. And I mean, for anybody who's listening, please join the stats. You said it was a stats
Workshop.
workshop.
Yes.
Make sure you need some of those fundamentals. So, instead of making those errors down the line, it makes a lot of sense to get the training early on. So your training with your passion and your, vision for where you want to go to is a win-win combination anytime. I'm a big believer of that. So please join in for that startup event. And also, the final thing I would say is that I want people to also make sure that they, again, go for training or do a lot of reading,
Mm-hmm.
as to how other people, or listen to podcasts like this, or watch a lot of people who started businesses, because I would tell you that I also glean a lot of information from other people, that have gone ahead of me or are doing things that I'm amazed about. And it might be just one thing that they're doing in their sphere or their field. And I'm like, aha, and I can take it and sort of twist it and bring it to my own field and do something similar. So I always encourage people, knowledge is never lost.
Mm-mm.
Make sure that you have knowledge, but network, be tenacious, don't take no for an answer, but make sure that you're taking risks that you calculated risk, right? And that calculated risk will come once you've done your due diligence with your BMC and the training and the networking and all that. So thank you so much, Ukot, again, for the opportunity. Thank you so much for the platform. And I'm looking forward to, again, coming back, maybe some more to share some of the
Yeah.
big things that we're
Yeah.
doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All
Thank
right.
you.